Okay, guys, we might begin. Thank you very much for joining us today for this amazing webinar that we've got with Ian Roberts. This is a webinar, obviously, through the Concussion Legacy Foundation Australia. And my name's Annitta Siliato, and I'm the Executive Director for this organisation. I'm very proud to be part of this group as we advocate for more awareness and education in the area of concussion, CTE, and other things related to sports, as well as in other areas. It's great to see you here. We've had a number of notable Australians on our webinar series, and tonight is no different. We are honoured to have Ian Roberts to share more of his experience as a player and advocate. Just a little bit about CLF before we get into talking with Ian. The CLF Australia is something that an organisation that is there to raise education and awareness, particularly for coaches, for schools, for children, for parents, for sporting organisations, around how we can better manage concussion and also lower the risks of CTE. Possibly looking at how we can modify sports or simple things we can do to still enjoy our sports, but make sure that we look after the health and well-being of our players. Tonight's interview, I will interview Ian, I'll ask a few questions, and then we'll open up the Q&A box for people to submit their questions, and you can ask something directly to Ian while you have the opportunity, which is great. Also, we're recording this webinar, so don't worry if you miss a section. It will be sent out to your emails as well. Just a shout out to our social media. We have a number of outlets here for you to join: our Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So please, if you're not already part of this, we would love you to join in and sign up. Or you might want to sign up for our newsletter as well, so we can contact you about all the latest news that's happening in this amazing organisation. And I have to say, we've been operating for a year now, and I've met some amazing people, and also I've met and great to have been able to support a number of people who are struggling with a variety of different symptoms and issues that are related to concussion in sport. Okay, Ian. Ian is here tonight. He's a former international representative rugby player. He's played in the New South Wales State of Origin. He's played for South Sydney Rabbitohs, Wigan, Manly Sea Eagles, and North Queensland Cowboys during the 80s and 90s. So a very solid rugby career. Also, not only did he have an incredible sporting career, but he also is very passionate in this space of concussion and CTE, and in ways that we can raise awareness and build a stronger bond and community around these issues. He is a leader in addressing these sports in society, and the first rugby player in the world to come out due to the Pride movement. So, I mean, that's just a great accolade to have, and something that we would love to talk about as well during this session. He does inspire diversity, and will be opening up a future Sydney LGBTQI Museum called Qtopia. So I'm really excited to learn more about that as well. And something else that might be interesting to us all, but Ian is also an actor. And, you know, having a look at some of the films and television series you've been in, quite a very impressive list there. So we would like to welcome Ian. Thank you for coming to our webinar this evening.
And that's such a flattering introduction. I hope I can live up to it. And I will say, yeah, I have been acting now for about 25 years, but if truth be told, if I had to survive on my acting checks, I'd go pretty hungry. But I mean, I love the work when I get it. That is my passion. So I've got a cat here that wants to be part of this. Yeah, that wants to be part of this of the cast.
No, absolutely.
She'll keep jumping up. She'll keep jumping up all day, all night. But yeah, no. So yeah, no. I've been very fortunate, particularly, and with the acting stuff, that's my passion. But my bread and butter stuff is what I do now. Most of the oxygen in my life at the moment is taking up with. I don't know if you can see that. That's the Qtopia. It's a cultural and a history a Pride Centre. We're opening February 23. It's to do it. Inverted commas. We don't use the word museum because museums have to archive, and we don't archive. We don't. So we're a cultural centre, a cultural and history centre for queer culture. But museum, but very submersive. A lot of stuff like it's a bit out of the box, like holograms and that type of thing. Where we want people to really, there is an incredible wow factor with what we're planning. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I've been very fortunate, and they are very fortunate.
That's great. Well, look, we'd love to sort of delve into that a little bit more later on. I guess let's switch now to your NRL career. And I guess, my first question is, was it always your dream to become an NRL player? And, how did you feel when you actually achieved it? And what were some of the highlights of that career?
This is going to sound a little bit weird, but I'm like, for people who know me from my playing career, I mean, I never actually played NRL. I played ARL and Super League. I was actually before NRL was. I think the NRL was their initial year was 2000 or 99. I actually retired in 99.
Okay.
So I'm yeah. That's just, it's funny hearing that.
I'm from Melbourne, so.
Yeah, no. When you said that, I only worked that out myself. Then I don't think. I mean, I actually work for the NRL. That's what some of the stuff that I do. My in diversity and inclusion. We run a couple of programs around that. But did I ever want to? It was very different when I was playing. Now there's a lot more money in the game for, and it's very professional. When I was playing, all of us had jobs. I mean, I'm an electrician by trade. Even when I first started at South in '86, we used to train at 4:30 so everyone could get home from work, and then you go to training. So it was a very different world. But yes, I always wanted to play first grade. It was back first grade then. But growing up, that was kind of like boys played footy, and girls did netball. My two sisters played netball. Me and my brother played footy growing up, and it was almost like a daycare centre for my mum and dad, so they didn't have to look after us 24 hours a day. They used to send us off to the footy, and I suppose
for a hard man on the footy field. There's a comment in there.
yeah. I suppose I was always a little bit better than average, and that's not me. Like, I think that's reasonable to say. I didn't really think of seeing a profession in rugby league because, to be honest, in my first year of rugby league, I think in 1986 when I finished, I made a total of that year of $9,000. So it was a very different scenario. I mean, I used to earn a lot more as an electrician, but I was kind of very fortunate in the fact that when Super League happened in '95. I still had 3 years left to play after that, and that's when the big money. That's when the whole dimension changed financially for players. But yeah, I always enjoyed. Always wanted to play footy. I was always kind of good. I don't know if I ever saw it as a profession growing up, but it was always something I wanted to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a very familiar story.
It's a really interesting story because the same with AFL. How it's changed so much over the last 20 years in terms of, sort of like for now, players don't generally work, it's something that's their full-time career.
It's incredible. I mean, the NRL, and I'm sure I know the AFL and the AAU and the A-League do this. They're now going out recruiting like teenagers, on contracts for 13, 14 and 15. Like it's a very different setup. I'm promoting that. I'm totally in support of that. Like whatever someone wants to pay for a player, and that's what they're worth. I mean, when people say, "Oh, is that player worth this much money?" I said, "Well, look, if someone's willing to pay it, and that's what
Yeah.
they're worth. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm all for that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No problem. Okay, just and hi Christy. I can see your comments there. Concussions. Did you suffer from a few concussions during your playing career? Is there anything that stands out? Can you share your journey in that space?
Yeah, I had a number of concussions. It was very different back then too. The way they were treated, and it was almost like a badge of honor back then.
Mhm.
You'd get like concussed on the field. The trainer would run on and hit you in the back of the head with a wet sponge. You know, how many fingers am I holding up? Off you go. I mean,
Yeah.
it was very rarely that it's unless you were totally knocked out, and I've been totally knocked out like a number of times. Um, I I mean, the science and the research is in. We know now the consequences and the long term stuff. But that was never, unfortunately, that was, yeah, we didn't have that. We didn't have that knowledge and that foresight back there. I mean, now, I finished playing basically 25 years ago. When I started playing is like 35 years ago. So it's there's been a lot of research and a lot of progress made in this area. I can remember and my story is not unfamiliar for anyone who played at the level I did. Concussions were quite a regular thing, and I mean, concussions. There's all levels of concussion too. But
Yeah.
even in my tackling style, I used to get concussed quite. I can literally say, it wasn't unusual 2 or 3 times in a game, and not
Mm.
and never have to be checked by any of the medical staff. But like I
Yep.
said, there's a lot more research and there's a lot more education around this subject matter now, particularly within the last 18 months. The
Yep.
research is in, and there are potentially long-term consequences. Sorry, I'll answer the question. Sorry.
No, that's fine. No, I think what you're raising is important, and they're comparing it to like smoking or
Yeah,
sitting in the sun. We didn't know about the risks, and now that we know, we can sort of take steps towards making it sort of better for players and looking after their health. And I guess, like you said, you probably had a few concussions and you kept playing. Were you ever knocked out and kept
oh,
playing?
loads of times. Yeah, loads of
Uh,
times. Yeah. Being stretched off the field, yeah, loads of times. When I say loads of time, probably, anywhere from 10 to 20 times in my
yeah,
but that's nothing unusual at the level I played. And I was
yeah,
also playing front. I was also like a prop, a front rower. So
yeah,
there was always plenty of head knocks, and it was a very different. I do think the NRL have done a good game in limiting the
mm,
amount of times for potential head knocks. Even with scrums now, whoever feeds the ball gets the ball back. When I was playing scrums, because it used to be a contest, and we would pack in hard, and even that type of stuff, that knocking of the heads when you pack down in a scrum, there's 20 to 30 scrums a game. For a front
yeah,
rower, so you're bashing your head at least that many times.
yes,
You,
yeah,
you understand? The
yeah,
NRL have changed the rules now, and they've taken that away. They've taken that out of the game, which is the more we can reduce that level of contact, particularly above the shoulders. I'm all
yeah.
for it. I'm all for it.
And I think a lot of the sort of changes are also with junior sports and training. So not having as many opportunities in training to sort of have those hard tackles and
Yeah,
reducing it.
absolutely.
Yeah. So yes,
And the junior levels right through to the professional ranks. So that's all part of the training process now. Yeah, and you're right, and that's all come about because of the research, because of the history, because now there's an open conversation around the subject matter.
yeah, no, and that's what's great. I think everyone's talking about it. Everyone's aware. We accept that we can't prevent it completely, but we can certainly look at ways to, reduce the risk of it happening and also managing it better. Certainly not getting knocked out and going back on and
Yeah,
playing. I think
the
that's something.
old smelling salts. That was a classic. The trainer would run on with smelling salts on the field. There you go. Off you go, kid. Off you go. Some pat you on
Yeah,
the
yeah,
back. And but that was, I mean, it sounds almost comical saying it now, right?
I
But
know, I
that
know.
was really the way it was. I'm now talking obviously like 30 and 40 years ago, but
Yes.
that was what it was like. Here you go, kid, get that in. Off you go, off
Yes.
you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
it was almost like, I remember when my brother played footy, it was almost something that they'd sit after the game, have a beer and have a laugh about what had happened. And
And
so it's
if you
definitely
did get
changed.
knocked out, it was almost like a badge of honor. I'll never
Yeah.
forget. There was we played a game, and it would have been 1986 or 1987. So I'm 2021, and we played at the Sydney Cricket Ground. It was an Anzac Day game against Canterbury, and there's a guy by the name of David Gillespie, and his nickname is Cement. And the reason he's called Cement because he used to hit like a cement truck. That was. I mean, he's a lovely guy. I played with David at Manly a few years later, but I don't remember the incident, but I've seen the video, and it was a beautiful day, and the sun was out, wasn't a cloud in the sky, and we South. That's when I was playing for South. We were playing Canterbury. Anyway, the video shows me taking the ball up, and David had come in from my blind side and absolutely cut me in half. I don't remember any of this, obviously, but and then I lost the ball, and the play moved away. But what I kind of do remember is Maury, who was our trainer at South Sydney then. I remember lying on the ground. I was just looking up at the sky. I opened my eyes. It was this beautiful blue sky, and Maury came, and I thought I was on Bondi Beach. I was like, "Oh, Maury, what are you doing at Bondi?" And then he slapped me up, and I said, "Oh, what are all these people doing here?" He's like, "Come on, kid, you're coming straight off."
Yeah.
But that's the craziness of it. I mean, I went back on later in about 10 minutes. That was the craziness of what it was like back then.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, thanks so much for sharing that. What about after retiring from your NRL? What were some of the challenges from
Um,
when you retired, or did you have any challenges? And what have
yeah.
you done to overcome these challenges?
Um, in regards to the subject matter, what we're talking about, I when I retired from footy a couple of years after, I went and did I was enrolled at NIDA to do the dramatic arts, the acting course there, which
Yeah.
was a 3-year degree. But and then after I graduated from NIDA, I went over to the States and lived there for about. I ended up being there for about 6 years in
Oh,
LA,
wow.
just
Okay.
trying my luck at over there. But the reason I came back is I had actually had, and this was when I first started noticing there was an issue with my
Mm.
memory or whatever. I had always been very confident in doing scripts and doing auditions for scripts, just needing a couple of days to get stuff down, and and then I was okay. I was normally okay. After being there for a couple of years, I did start to just sense that I wasn't as sharp in the auditions as what I normally felt, and my confidence it kind of affected my confidence. But I kind of ignored that. But then after I was there for 6 years, and it was on about the 5-year mark. I had 2 episodes where I lost time. And what I mean by that is, one of the first time I had it, I was driving the car. Then what felt like that suddenly I was at home in my place,
Mm.
and almost 2 hours had passed. But I was okay. I just didn't remember. I just kind of didn't remember how I got there. It was terrifying when it happened. And then
Yeah.
about a week and a half later, the same sort of thing happened in the place I was at, in the home. One minute I was in the shower, next minute I was on the couch, but a couple of hours had passed. I was okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do remember that terrifying me because I didn't know if I was black. I just didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
Then what with like I said, I had been like, my confidence in auditions had been really lacking because I just wasn't remembering
Mm.
lines as sharp as I used to, and being able to then layer the scene, layer the audition with other stuff, not worrying about the lines. Anyway, and as it turned out, my dad got just after I had those 2 episodes, my dad became very ill. I came back to Sydney. My partner and I came back to Sydney. My dad passed away, which we ended up staying in Sydney because of my mum. So we didn't go back to the States. We had planned to go back. And when I was back in Sydney, I went and had a whole load of testing done. I've been a part of a few research programs, a whole load of cognitive stuff and training and testing, and they did come back saying that there was a level of damage. But I just recently I was at the Prince of Wales Hospital only probably 3 months ago, doing a follow-up for my cognitive stuff. And I'm all about reading and I don't know if doing maybe I've been in a better situation than some people with my history, in the fact that I've kept doing auditions and that, and forcing myself to learn and read and be creative inside. And I don't know, and maybe it's just a placebo effect, but I always do feel better about myself and my situation when I had been. I don't know if it's the right phrase to use, but brain training. It feels like it's brain training to me. And like I said, I don't know if that's a placebo effect, but I always do. And I feel like now, when I went for the testing at St Vincent's just recently, my cognitive stuff came back really well, and that I'm the best it's been. And like I said, I don't know if that's just luck or just, but I do feel like I personally have made some improvement with my memory. I mean, I was starting to forget like silly stuff, or like, I mean, not silly stuff. I shouldn't say it like that. That sounds demeaning. I do apologise. Where I like simple stuff, like my keys and people's names, and like even going out the door, or going out the place, thinking, where am I going? Like having to go home and think, what the hell is going, like, and that becomes terrifying. It's, if I sound like I'm making a joke of it, it became terrifying. It almost became like, and I was really uncomfortable telling people close to me. I had no problem explaining this to doctors, but I didn't want, and I should imagine this is quite a familiar problem situation for people in that situation. I didn't want other people to worry about me. Like, there's certain things you can't protect people from. That was always because my partner got quite concerned as well. But I don't know if I just answered that question.
No, I think what you said is great, and I think, you know, for some of the people that are listening there and may have gone through similar experiences, just to know the importance of keeping the brain, you know, active and doing new things and forcing, because the brain probably doesn't want to do it. And I guess it's about keeping it active and doing that brain training, which is a really significant thing to take on. And I think also
there's been a lot of research challenging that theory both ways. I like both sides of it. And that's why I always say, I don't know if this is just purely me and a placebo thing, but I definitely do. I definitely do feel better about my situation. My capacity for memory now.
That's right. And I think that, you know, we do need to do more research, because we don't know 100% what the situation is. And I guess there's so many different variations. But what I have noticed, just speaking to literally hundreds of people over the last year, is they are saying similar things, where they are meditating. For example, you know, when we speak to Sean Smith, he uses meditation and mindfulness, and he knows that when it comes and goes for him, but he knows how to calm down the system and try and work out a way to, you know, get back to the present moment. You know,
giving up. Can I just add, Anita?
Yes.
I mean, when I first retired from footy, I did have like huge anxiety and depression situation, which is also again a familiar situation for retiring players. And I at first, I mean, and the thing was, my mother has a history of depression, and that's like quite severe depression. So, I mean, I don't know if it's hereditary, but it's definitely in our family, because other members of the family have serious. And I do remember when I was in the States thinking maybe somehow that was connected, and not knowing if that was how anxiety resurfaced or. But yeah, I mean, I would say that in my situation, it wasn't. I mean, it definitely wasn't the anxiety. It was, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I guess that's the thing. We need to have more research, but if there are any ways that we can, and at CLF, we want to give people hope. Like obviously, there are situations where people may have worse symptoms or not, but we're all about giving people hope and giving them strategies to deal with whatever is coming their way. So thanks for sharing that. And I think really important. The other important thing too is I think we can talk about it more now. A lot of people that I've met in the past, they've kept it hidden and they don't want to share it. I think just talking about it also is a way that can help people.
It is one of those things. It's when I was a kid, I mean, I'm been diagnosed with dyslexia as well. I was diagnosed in my 30s. But when I was a kid, we're talking about shame here, like the way shame can affect you. When I was a kid in first and second class, I'm now talking when I was 5 and 6 or 7. I had to. Dyslexia wasn't a thing back then. Like no one knew about dyslexia. You were just dumb, or I mean, it doesn't sound. And I was always really. That's the only time in my life I'd never been uncomfortable about being same-sex attracted. Nothing like that. It was always a shame of being that I couldn't read and write. But when I went to night, I actually learned to write because of phonetics, and learning to read a different way. And my now partner Daniel is a school teacher as well. So he does, which was wonderful. I mean, Dan and I have been together 20 years, so that's been really wonderful for me too. But what you were talking about was shame, and I do remember, like, I was always that kid in class. If I got asked to stand up and read from the book, I'd kick the table over or kick the chair. I'd make it about something else, and then get sent to the principal or go home. I literally couldn't read right up until I was, after I left school. I was always okay at maths and science, so that kind of kept me balanced. But I mean, I can read and write now. I'm no poet, I'm no Shakespeare, but I can manage. But we were talking about shame and the way shame can prevent, and it's almost like when, particularly within men, declaring that somehow, I think a lot of men see this as a weakness somehow, and it's incredible the lengths some people go to protect themselves from other people's that sense of shame. I will say that that's how I relate the situation. I mean, shame is such an incredible driver.
No, absolutely. I think, again, and that's why it's great that we're able to have this conversation and learn more about how we can talk about this. We don't have to hide anymore. We don't have to feel that shame. And I think that's what's really great. Look, speaking about your English, I disagree. You're an amazing actor. And can we just talk a little bit about your acting and what you've done? I saw you were in Superman 2, Fantasy Island. You were some doctor.
Yeah, I've done a lot of crazy stuff. Like I will say,
what's your favorite one? Favorite one that you've done, maybe?
We just finished. We just finished shooting the next installment from Mad Max. It's called Furiosa. It's released next year. We shot that in Broken Hill for how long were we there for? I was probably there for about 4 or 5 months, and then we did the rest of the shooting in Sydney. Most of the rest of the shooting was in Sydney. That comes out in February. I have done some wonderful stuff. I mean, there's a show called Mr. In Between. That had. It is such it's the most. It's like this gold nugget that no one knows about in Australia. It did huge business in the States. Yeah, I would recommend if anyone likes. It's almost like a real crossover between Chopper and Underbelly. It's that real dry Australian humour, but it is, and that's why the Americans loved it. But it just really didn't get the traction here that it deserved. I would, if anyone's looking for a series to watch, and I'm not saying this because I'm in it. I mean, I was a big fan of the show. I mean, I'm only in one episode. It goes for 3 seasons, but I was a big fan of the show. Scott Ryan is the guy who plays the lead. He's also the writer. He plays. he plays the main character Ray. It is such a wonderful show. If anyone's looking for a series to watch, Mr. In Between.
Right.
Yeah, I've done loads of stuff. When I was in the States, I did loads of really B grade, loads and loads of B grade movies, which is wonderful stuff. I mean, I've done loads of theatre too. I do love theatre. Theatre, unless you're playing the big theatres, it's really hard to make a living in theatre. Here in Australia, anyway. But I mean, I do love it. Like I said, I mean, it's not a hobby. I mean, it's much more than that to me. But I have to have a job that my bread and butter is definitely Qtopia and the stuff I do called Think About It for the NRL, which is it's an educational program. It's a theatre sports. Do you know what theatre sports is?
Yes, I do. I've done a little bit.
It's a program around inclusion and diversity around theatre sports, and it's wonderful seeing people. There's 3 or 4 actors up on stage. We know where the scene's driving through to. And the scenes are all around really awkward situations. They're around misogyny, like bad language, homophobia, drugs, stuff that happens at work. And we started as an NRL program actually, but we now do the police force. We do corporations. It's really branched out, but it's really great seeing people up. Like you get 2 people up from the audience involved in the scene, and they're supposed to navigate as best they can. Then we talk about it, but it is great seeing some people squirm and become very uncomfortable. And we use a lot of humour, but some of it is really raw. And we've had many people break down and cry. And it's called Think About It. It's a great program. But that's my acting. I mean, that's me still having my finger on the pulse with acting. I love it. Yeah, I love that part of it.
What a great program as well, and obviously it's got a lot of improvisation, so it's that brain
all it
using
is.
that brain as well. So, and it's great that you're touching on topics because it gives that safe space to maybe show the emotion that's maybe built up. What an amazing program, and I think it's great. I'd certainly be looking into that.
Call Think About It. Anyone can go online and have a look. It's something I'm really proud to be a part of because it's been running for about 10 years now. It started as an NRL initiative because they wanted us to go out and talk to the guys because all the bad behaviour that was happening socially. It's just a really good initiative and really good program.
That's amazing. That's great. Well, thanks for sharing. Before I open up to the Q&A, so if anyone has any questions, please pop them in the chat. I can see there's already one there, but if you've got any other questions, just Qtopia. I mean, how long have you had this idea? Where's what's your goals?
It really, I mean, it's like I don't know if I said earlier, it really does take all the oxygen up in my world at the moment. I've been involved since the start. We started about 3.5 years ago, me and a couple of people. And this is also the 3rd resurrection of a museum that I've been tried to get involved with over the last 20 years. And we have learned from the last 2 as well. But now we have a home, we have a base, which is at the old police station at Taylor Square, Darlinghurst Police Station. We have a lease there for 20 years now. All levels of government, the council, the state government and the federal government have all been really supportive financially as well. We open in February 23. That's a Friday night before the Mardi Gras parade.
Fantastic.
So I mean, it tells a story of our First Nations people before colonisation and queer culture within our First Nations people, which not many people know about. Colonisation, legality to illegality, marriage equality, obviously the HIV epidemic. We have 12 curators working with us. And there's 8 exhibitions at any one time. 3 of those will be permanent. The 8th, there'll be an AIDS memorial. I won't let the cat out of the bag, but so you have to come. But it's and the rest will be on rotation. But it's we will be the largest. I'm not allowed to use the word. Well, I can, but the word museum. It will be the largest queer museum in the world when it's open. But this has been a long time coming. It really. The reason I'm involved, as I said before, my partner, not the reason I'm involved, but my main drive in this is I said my partner Dan's a school teacher. I'm really about education, education, education. I really do believe that's our greatest sword and our greatest shield for understanding and inclusion and for the wider community to embrace the queer community. We've been working with the state government, the education department on syllabus and curriculum for primary schools and high schools. So we'll have excursions to the museum and incursions so that we go out to regional areas as well. And like I said, we'll also have corporate programs in and around inclusion and diversity and stuff like, what is a safe space? Like people have this concept of, a safe space for someone who has a disability is very different for someone who is of colour or Indigenous. You know what I mean? Like we tend to think of a safe space as what's safe for us, but in our little bubble. So there's all these bubbles. Like we want to like bring those types of conversations out. So we opened the 23rd of February. I'm so like pleased. I feel really like grateful to have been a part. Like it's really because of the history of not the other two failed. I won't say failed, but the other two attempts that we made, we did learn a lot from them. It has been like this incredible journey, and it's almost this way, and this time it's been really like almost embraced by the community and the wider community. And it's like to the point where it's nearly gotten ahead of us. Like just like, we need to pull. Hey, it's happening too fast. It's like we didn't think it was going to happen this fast, but we are ready for it now. We are definitely opening on the 23rd of February, and everyone's welcome.
It's you're certainly inspirational, Ian, and I'm so busy as well. Like all these things,
I will admit to that, being very busy at the moment. I also just wanted to give a shout out to the Jewish Museum, who've been fantastic with us. They've almost been like a real guiding light for us. They're in the same area, just around the corner. But I just wanted, they have been so fantastic and really helped us incredibly.
No, that's great, and I think what's really more great is that you're making a significant difference in the world, and I think that's just a beautiful thing. Let's go on to the Q&A. So we've got a couple of questions coming in. So we've got Chris. Hi, Chris. How are you? Hey, Ian, have you ever thought of jumping into the boxing ring? Johnny Lewis said you could have won an Australian heavyweight title when he was an Aussie fitness coach.
Johnny Lewis is a friend of mine. I trained with Johnny for a long time as well, and Johnny used to try and encourage me to box. But given a different circumstance and time, that was when I was quite young. When I say young, I was like late teens, early 20s when I was training with Johnny, and he's a champion guy. I had my heart I just had my, not my heart, but I just had my head around football, and I just wanted to succeed there. But it could have been anything, I suppose. And with Johnny Lewis as a coach, you could have only ever been like fantastic, because that's how good he is. You know what I mean? Like the worst I could have been would have been fantastic. I'm not saying that about me. I'm saying that he is such a good coach. Like I couldn't have had a better coach. He's a wonderful guy as well. I love Johnny. And can I just let people, anyone who's watching this, know now, if you have any question, it doesn't matter how curly or uncomfortable it is, please ask it. There's nothing off limits. I mean that quite sincerely. Yeah.
No, that's great. Thank you. Thanks for giving us that confidence. We've got another question coming in. Apart from memory changes associated with CTE, can you comment on behavioural changes?
I think I touched on before. I was a little bit worried when I first had when I was talking about the auditions, and my auditioning process was changing. I wasn't as sharp. I was, and that's why I mentioned. I think I mentioned I was quite concerned that maybe it was anxiety there was a mood, but I didn't really feel like there was a mood change like that within me. It was something very separate. I could well be wrong, but I did have that thought process for a long time. Or maybe this is how depression looks long term, or maybe this is how anxiety plays out long term. And I had been to see. I mean, I've been to see doctors in like specifically for this for that issue, which is why I then went on to have all that testing done, read my head knocks and concussions. So once again, I can only speak in my experience. I don't doubt that there is a connection there. Because when I initially left football and I had a like a mental breakdown, I spent some time in hospital. I spent like nearly 3 weeks. That was all to do with, well, what I think it was, just that sense of belonging. And when you're taken out of this structured workplace I was in, like we used to go to training in the morning. The group would be together, then we'd have lunch, and then the group would be together, and then we train again, and we'd do videos, and that was my life. Like I had a format, and a structured format that had been like that for such, and it was camaraderie as well. It wasn't just the structure that, it was the camaraderie, and like, because the team does become like almost like a part of your extended family, and you see them every day, and for them to be forget the money has nothing to do with this. For them to go from that to nothing, and you have. And you almost feel like you've already peaked in your life. I don't know how, if that, like at 34, when I thought when I retired 30, I felt like kind of like, is it downhill now and stuff like that. That's what really sent me over the edge, and my mind started racing, and all that stuff. I don't often talk about this, but that stuff about voices in your head, that was real for me. That was that was real. So I don't know if there's a connection there, but I think I said that earlier as well. But I don't actually. I feel more confident to say that there wasn't a connection between my memory loss and anxiety and my personal experience. Yeah.
And I think, again, what you talk about mindset and, what you're telling yourself and what those voices are saying can be quite powerful. And I think, I certainly resonate with that. And I think, the fact that what you're doing now with Qtopia and I think, what does it think about it? And all these amazing projects that really are super exciting and give you meaning. And I think,
you feel like, it's worthy. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word. I know, but it does feel like, and this isn't about leaving a legacy or anything like that. I honestly, I mean that. And I've been so fortunate in my life. I mean, I mean this so sincerely, what I'm about to say. I'm so fortunate that I never had any internalized homophobia growing up in my life. And I mean that. I mean, I can never remember being anything apart from same-sex attracted ever since I was like 5 and 6. I remember the first time. I mean, I don't want this to sound nasty. I grew up in an incredibly, how do I put this without making it sound like I'm being nasty? I grew up in a very racist, misogynistic, homophobic family. But I know this is going to sound like a contradiction, but a very loving family.
Yeah.
Now, I know that sounds like a bit of a clash. So, and what I mean by that is I was always well aware that I was loved. I mean, I can remember the first time that I knew that I wasn't to let people know that I was same-sex attracted. I would have been 7 years old. It was 1972 because my dad and I were watching a show, and maybe my memory's been embellished, but this did happen because I went to the 50th anniversary. There was a show on the ABC called Checkerboard. It was 1972, and it was the first time 2 gay men had kissed ever on Australian TV. And I remember, I know I watched it because I remember the situation. My dad was sat there and I sat next to him, and we was watching, and I thought that when the 2 men kissed, I was like, oh, that's what I do with Barry Riley next door. He was my next door neighbour. He was my mate. We used to kiss, right? Barry's gone on to be married. He's not gay, and it was just boys like messing. But that was my concept. I said, oh, that's what I do with Barry Riley. And then my dad said, and I'm going to use the language my dad said. So if anyone's going to be triggered by a bad word, I'm just letting you know. My dad said, "Oh, those fucking queers make my skin creep," and that was my warning in my head as a 7-year-old. I've got to keep. I need to keep this to myself. But I never felt any shame, and like I've never felt bad about it. And I've been lucky. That's what I was trying to get at earlier. I've been so fortunate that I've never had any shame about it. No internalized homophobia. I've always been absolutely okay with being same-sex attracted, whereas many people aren't that fortunate. There is other stuff at play. So, and that's, I consider my journey much easier because of that. I'm not saying it was all plain sailing. It wasn't. There was a lot of bad stuff. But every person, regardless of their sexuality, everyone has a journey. There's peaks and valleys anywhere. I'm just really fortunate that I've never had that sense of shame, and it's almost like, it sounds terrible. I almost think being gay has been my superpower. I mean, like I know that sounds a bit.
I love that.
No, I love being. I do. I love being gay. I like, and what it's given me. My mum and dad were very against it, but they've done a complete 180, and they have been like that for a long time now. My brother and my sisters are the same. I mean,
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's, it's really awesome, because I think, acceptance of self is such an important thing, and you're embracing life, and that's, that's what's really inspirational.
I was just trying to get. That's right. You just reminded me of the point I was driving through to. Then that's why I've always been. And I do think that's why I've never felt shame about my head knocks and feeling bad about that. I just didn't want my family worried about me. I've never felt like, I knew this was other stuff at play here, and it was nothing that I was in control of. But I've never had that sense of shame either. But I do know a lot of men, particularly around head knocks and CTE stuff, and there is a lot of shame involved, and it's like I keep saying I'm very fortunate that I just haven't had that sensation.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. I've got another question from Matt S. I'm involved in umpiring community football AFL in the Alice Springs. What advice do you have for improving the processes for managing concussion from an umpiring or refereeing perspective? We have limited power to influence a proper response, which is managed by the club officials. At best, it is ad hoc. So thanks, Matt, for that question.
Anita, I'm going to ask for some help here. I mean, I think that's such a deep question, and I totally I wish what was the boy's name? Matt, is it?
Matt, yeah.
Yeah,
Matt.
I wish I had the right. I don't have I don't have an answer that I feel like would be worthy to give you to that. I mean, I would ask for Anita help, support.
I think in this case, I think for managing concussion, I guess, it is difficult. It really does depend on the club. That's what I've noticed. Yeah. And obviously my kids play sports, and some clubs are better at it than others. Some have concussion protocols, and, they have education seminars. So perhaps in this case, perhaps what you need to do is try and set up a meeting. Maybe you can contact the CLF and we can give you some advice and some tips, or perhaps we could do some sort of a meeting with whoever is involved in that. But it's all about managing and having maybe some concussion rules or a policy around concussion. That would be a good way to start, and have that policy and perhaps educate that policy. It really depends. There might be some fight back, but I think persistence is key. Never give up on what you're trying to achieve. And if one way doesn't work, try something else. But so that
Anita and I was speaking before, and I said sometimes you just got to keep poking the bear. You got to be that squeaky wheel. You have to keep annoying it. You have to keep pestering. Yeah, mate, I wish I had some better advice, but I do know how difficult it is, mate. I've had similar situations with the NRL and in and around pride rounds and that type of thing. I mean, I wish I had a good answer to give you, mate.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, keep at it. And with the NRL, CLF Australia has recently signed up as their official
Yeah.
helpline, and that didn't come straight away. That was from persistence and trying to build up the confidence and trust, and having even some research to back up what you're trying to do. But you can always reach out to us, Matt, as well at CLF, and we might be able to help you as well. I'd love to learn more about Alice Springs as well and bring you to our community. So thanks, Matt. Okay, might be our final question is from Frank. What is your greatest fear going forward? It's an interesting one.
Yeah, that is.
Or maybe you don't have one.
Oh no, well, I mean, I've been saying that's a good question, Frank. Thank you. I'm yeah, I don't know I'm so honestly, Frank, I'm so grateful for my situation. I mean, um I'm so grateful for being involved with Qtopia and the stuff that we do with the NRL around Think About It. I mean, I'm not religious, but I'm going to use the word blessed. I feel like I've been like incredibly fortunate and blessed. Um, it's not something and it does concern the subject matter. I have thought in the last 12 months, a number of my ex-playing colleagues have spoken out about their situation with their mental health and the situation and the quite dire. Particularly, two of my friends are in a very bad situation. I'm not going to say that stuff doesn't scare me a bit. Like there is that potential, and from the era I've come from, there was no precaution taken in and around this space. I suppose that is a bit of a fear, but it's not something I lose sleep over, mate. But it is something that does cross my mind. It's like those moments when I forget stuff. I mean, I still have those moments all the time, like every day when I forget stuff, and sometimes it does become very frustrating. I don't know if I'm scared of, like, fearful of that, but it can be unsettling.
Yep. No, well, thank you again for sharing, and thanks, Frank, for your question there. And all right, well, look, we might wrap it up. Thank you for joining us today. It's certainly been great to hear your story. I feel like this hour has gone so quickly, and you've been so entertaining, personal, connected, and so on. Before we do finish up, I just wanted to let our community know if there is anyone struggling with any persistent post-concussion symptoms or suspected CTE, we are here for you. So please reach out to our CLF helpline. You can see that this is here on the screen, or you can go to our website as well, and you can follow the helpline. Go to the tab where there's a helpline, and we are always happy to support you. We have some dedicated staff there that are looking out for you and helping you with perhaps getting some guidance or direction of any sort of medical practitioners or other bodies that might be able to help you with any issue. We're also going to have some Zoom caregivers sessions coming up as well, so please keep an eye out for that. In addition to this, we also have our next webinar, which is our last one for the year, will be with Luke Ivans on the 1st of November at 8 p.m. For those of you that may not have heard Luke, he played for the South Australia League, and he is running a triathlon on the 19th of November. And it's been amazing. It's a huge event. We have over almost 200 teams competing on the day. He has every team from the South Australian Football League in that particular triathlon, as well as the Premier's going to be there, Triple M, Channel 7. So it's certainly going to be a great event to raise education and awareness for CLF and for concussion and post-concussion and CTE. So finally, we do put on these events, and if you do feel that you could make a donation, we would love that. Again, this is not what it's about. We're really trying to build our community. but anything that you could give could be helpful, or even if you just want to volunteer or find out how you can get involved with our foundation, we would love to hear from you. So back to Ian. Ian, I have thoroughly enjoyed this webinar. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. You're such a lovely man with a big heart, and I can see that you know, you really are making a difference in the world, as I've indicated before. So thank you for being here. Any final comments, any final words before we finish
It's my
up?
pleasure. It's been my pleasure, and I would just reaffirm what you said. You know, there is help out there for anyone who might be suffering. Believe me, there's help. Yeah, don't be too scared to reach out.
Yeah, no, that's great. And looking forward to Qtopia, I have to admit. It's something, I think it's going to be an amazing success. And like you said, largest in the world. So good on you. Congratulations on all the achievements that you have. And I'm sure you're going to continue with more. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.